podcast where two longtime friends and sometimes a guest talk about their favorite games from the perspective of an average player. My name is Andrew Kimball.
And I'm Dylan Wren, and we are your friendly neighborhood gamers.
What is the matter? Father?
No! Quick! The light! Father, no! The light!
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the neighborhood. Dylan, you ready for this one?
I am. I know you're ready too.
Yeah, this has been an episode that since almost the infancy of my podcasting days, I've been trying to get other people to play this game and these games. Now there's two of them, but yeah, we're going to be talking about the Plague Tale series now at this point. So that is a Plague Tale Innocence and a Plague Tale Requiem. I guess right out the gate, I'll throw out how we're going to kind of approach spoilers on this episode because Requiem is still pretty new when this comes out. So we're going to try to keep the spoiler conversation for both games to the back half of the conversation, and we'll give a warning, maybe like a little music break or something before we kick into that part of the conversation. So the front half will be overall impressions, thoughts, gameplay stuff, things like that. And then the back half is where we'll really dive into like the story and the moments and things like that.
Yeah. These are definitely games I think you should play.
Yeah.
So if you're worried about spoilers, if you're worried about any of that, if you just want to know like, hey, is this a good game or not? Yeah, they're good.
Yes.
Go check them out and come back if you're concerned about any of that kind of stuff.
I'll reference it again when we get to our verdict part of the episode, but we do have a YouTube video of like an official review for the first game. So you can already get our general thoughts and ratings on that in 5 minutes if you want to go check that out. So this is definitely going to be a deeper dive. There's no opening question, no closing segment other than our verdicts. This is going to be completely dedicated to this series because we got two games we're going to talk about pretty in depth here. So a little bit about the series. A Plague Tale Innocence and Requiem are action-adventure, survival, horror, stealth video games developed by Asobo Studio and published by Focus Home Entertainment. They follow siblings Amicia and Hugo de Rune as they look for a cure for Hugo's blood disease in southern France while fleeing from soldiers of the Inquisition and hordes of rats that are spreading the Black Plague. So it's a very top level kind of description. That's like, back of the box of.
Yeah. And that's more of a description of the first game than the second because we can't really give at a base level, it's still an action adventure horror stealth game that still stars them. But there is more going on in the second game that you can't really talk too much about without getting into some spoilers. So
right. I mean, yeah, this description still applies to the second game. But yeah, you as the player and the characters understand a lot more of what's happening in the world in the second game. It's, talked about Horizon earlier this year. It's kind of similar where the first game is all about the mystery. And then once the mystery is kind of resolved, then the second game picks up. So with that, we're going to start with A Plague Tale Innocence. We'll start with our history with this game. Mine is goes a little bit further back than yours. I think 2019. I have no idea what sparked me to pick it up. I remember it had to be podcasts. Like I heard a few people mention it, be like, wow, this game is actually really good.
Yeah.
It's kind of a fantasy like night setting. So the setting spoke to me. I was in a GameStop and they had the like buy two pre-owned get one free kind of deal going on.
Yeah.
And so I remember this being in a stack of games that I picked up because I think I had it physical. And so I just gave it a shot and yeah, it blew me away. The quality, like the production quality was way higher than what I was expecting because I was kind of going into it knowing that this is like a double A kind of game. It's not, this isn't like your Sony first party or your, Halos or anything like that, or even like a Ubisoft game. Like the size and scope of it was less than that, but it was almost immediately, I was like, wow, this looks good. And this is high quality as far as like the voice acting and characters and stuff like that. And so then I played through the whole thing, probably nonstop. It's not very long, maybe like 10 hours for the first one. And it was very impactful to me as like a surprising video game. Like when you play a game, I remember this happened with Arkham Asylum because I didn't know anything about that game before I started it either. And you get like halfway through and you're like, this is a really good video game. Like this is something special. This is more than just, something to do to kill time. And I had that feeling with A Plague Tale Innocence. And so I started evangelizing it.
Yeah.
And talked about it, I don't know, probably every other episode on Level Playing Field, at least mentioning it. And finally, you played it.
Yeah. So I don't know that when I really heard about this game for the first time, beyond just like, I know that for 2 to 3 years, every episode or two, and then just even when we're not doing a podcast, you'll kind of like bring it up sometimes. You've mentioned this game a ton and have been like, it's really good. You guys should check it out. Like,
were you worried that I like overhyped it? Like you would go into it and be, because I feel like that kind of happened to me when I played God of War the first time, where I was like, yeah, this is a good game, but why is everybody just falling all over themselves about it?
I don't think so, because I think I would feel that way were it like the industry constantly being like, hey, you need to play A Plague Tale. Hey,
that makes sense. Yeah.
But since it was you, I'm like, Andrew does not normally talk about
one game
like this. There's Sekiro, which you love to talk about, which is terrible. But then there's also like Bloodborne, which is another one that you like to talk about a bunch. And it's like, yeah, no, that's a fantastic game. So for you, like when you're talking about it, I'm like, okay, like this must be a pretty cool game if he's talking about it this much for this long.
And I feel like our tastes overlap pretty significantly. Like definitely things on the fringes that one of us prefers over the other kind of thing. But I think in general, we both enjoy similar experiences.
Exactly. And especially when it's a game that, had you not talked about it and I had looked at it, I wouldn't have thought it was a game that you would have picked up and like played and enjoyed, because there is a little bit of like you read it at the beginning. It's a little bit of a survival horror stealth game, which is not your typical type of game. It's not that you don't play those games necessarily, but it's not typically one that you would latch onto. And so the fact that there was something about this one that you did latch onto and was like, hey, this is really good, I was like, okay, so this is actually probably like a really good game. And then it sat on my like to be played list for years. And then finally I was in between games.
And we knew the sequel was coming.
And we knew the sequel was coming, and we knew the sequel was coming to Game Pass, so I knew I would have access to it right out the gate. And so I started looking at it. I was like, you know what, I'll go ahead and, I'm looking for something to play. I know this isn't a super long game. Let me jump in. Let me play this. And then we'll be ready to go, when the sequel comes out, and we can actually talk about it in more of a timely manner than maybe a game that came out in like 2018, 2019. But, like installing it, loading it up, and just starting it within 30 minutes to an hour, I was like, man, this is a really good game. Like I'm kind of sad I waited so long to play it, although it was kind of nice finishing it, and then like a month later, it's like, boom, here's the sequel. Like, congrats. So that was kind of nice.
Yeah, I also replayed it because I started when we did our YouTube review. I captured some gameplay for that, and I had played it on Xbox originally. They gave it away on PS Plus at some point, and so I booted it up on PS5 to capture that gameplay, and then I just kept playing. And I played it this year as well, which I'm glad I did, because I don't think that playing the sequel that I was like, oh, this is too much Plague Tale. I didn't get that feeling, but I did like having the fresh perspective of the first game versus trying to remember everything that happened, but also like what it felt like exactly to play it, 2 years ago or 3 years ago. So I think that was kind of good timing how that ended up working out.
Yeah, I would agree. The second game is definitely iterative on.
Yes.
It's not like they completely changed up how the game feels and plays, but they did a lot of quality of life stuff. They made a lot of little changes and improvements that I would imagine having a much fresher perspective going into it would help you notice that more. Like if I had played it years ago, I don't know that I would have picked up on everything.
Yeah, because like, being survival stealth game, you have a limited amount of a limited pool of like kind of not even weapons, really more like tools to get you through certain situations.
Yeah.
And I would have had a very foggy memory of what those specifically were in the first game. And so being able to go back and play it and be like, okay, yeah, these are exactly what you had. Okay, they changed how this works in Requiem. They changed this. One of the big things was that you don't have to actually pick up rocks anymore.
Yeah.
Amicia just always had rocks.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And so that was a great, Would I have remembered that from 3 years ago? I might have just been like, oh yeah, that was like in the first game. You had your rock pouch but no, you had to actually pick those up in the first game. So we touched on the first game being kind of like a AA experience, but really I think the only place that's super noticeable is in some of the facial animations, and obviously kind of the scope of the world, if that makes sense. But it works really well in this game and in this setting because it's linear and because there's like the plague and stuff, but like you're not seeing a bunch of NPCs on screen at one time or like exploring huge areas. Like it's very effectively using those like kind of limited spaces.
It is a AA game, but because of the way they set it up as a linear experience and because it's compact, it doesn't necessarily feel like a AA game because everything is so polished in those small areas. And like it's not as long as maybe some of the, AAA games. And, like you said, the facial animations, there are plenty of AAA games that come out with terrible facial animations too.
True.
Those are hard to get right. But it doesn't feel like they tried to overreach what they were capable of to make it a bigger, game than it needed to be. It seems like they were like, this is exactly what we can accomplish. And they did it and they polished it and it feels very good. It feels very... like I don't think, granted I played the first game 3 years after it came out. I didn't run into like any bugs or anything. I had no issues. Like the facial animations were a little janky, but overall it was like graphically it looked very good. Gameplay wise, it felt very good. There were parts of it that were design decisions in the first game that I wasn't the biggest fan of at times, but it did what it was supposed to do. I just maybe would have done something else. So,
and I think one of the things or a couple things that really make it feel more like a AAA experience is the writing is excellent.
Yeah.
The voice acting is some of the best I've ever heard. And not just in like line delivery, but in like whispering and breathing and like fear and like effects and stuff like that. And then the music and all the sound design, the sound of the rats, the sound of how things move and just the world, it makes it feel alive. Whereas in like, a lot of kind of AA games, they can't necessarily pull that off. And so it feels a lot more video gamey.
I guess that's a good way to put it. It does feel like in a lot of other games that are not the big AAA, they sacrifice parts of, the experience, like the sound design or the music or whatever, in order to improve other parts of it. And this one feels like they got the balance just right, where everything feels very good, whether that's because they took their time with it, whether that's because they got enough funding to cover everything, like whether that's they just are very smart and know what they're capable of. I don't know. But it didn't feel like there were cuts anywhere it's not like, oh, well, if we want the graphics to be this good, then we've got to cut back on the sound design. Or if we want the effects and voice acting to be good, maybe it's not going to run as fast or, look as good. So,
yeah. Because like it's a completely different experience, obviously. But when I think AA, the first game that pops in my head is a Darksiders game.
Yeah.
And obviously those games, they probably put a lot more energy and focus into making the combat feel good and like the puzzles and stuff. But when you're talking about like voice acting, line delivery, soundtrack, stuff like that, those feel like video games. You know, they feel like kind of an era, of a genre, of a tier, and A Plague Tale really punches above that.
Yeah.
The world is brutal. This game does not have there's no like quips or a lot of like there will be some lines back and forth with characters occasionally that are like, them trying to have a little bit of a joke or something, but this game takes itself very seriously, even with the fact that the rats being kind of like the core puzzle mechanic is kind of silly. The game believes in that, and so you believe in it. And then even when it starts moving more towards like the supernatural, the game takes that seriously.
Yeah.
And so it feels serious and real and like of this world, especially when you get to the second one and they really ratchet things up.
Yeah, because it does not take long for the first game to just immediately kick off. I don't think I was expecting it to go that quickly when I started playing, because it starts off and this isn't a spoiler because it's literally like the first thing that happens, but you're like hanging out with your dad, doing some stuff. And then like 5 minutes, 10 minutes into that, like your dog's dead, like the Inquisition's showing up at and it's just like, and from there, basically the game doesn't stop. There are like a couple of moments of peace and calmness to like intersperse a little bit, but pretty much the entire rest of the game is just like ratcheted up to 11. And then the second game, very similar, where it's like, I think at the very beginning, there's like a little bit of just kind of like peace and calm, and then boom, they throw a bunch of stuff back at you. And then there's interspersed in there's like some periods of peace to just like let you get a little comfortable, and then like they take it all away from you again. So
yeah, it's not a lighthearted game. It's not like
and these are children that all of this is happening to as well, just to like turn that up a little bit more.
Exactly.
It's not like you're I don't know like what Aloy's age was, but it feels very much like maybe Last of Us would have felt, where it's like Joel is an adult, but like Ellie is a child.
And there's other children that things happen to in The Last of Us. Last of Us is the comparison I make to people that I know have played that game when I try to get them to play this one, because not zombies, I don't think they call them zombies in Last of Us, but it's similar in stealth gameplay, some crafting, and just brutal, unforgiving world and story that isn't afraid to like go there. You know, it's not afraid to hurt you. Kill a character you like, those kind of things.
Yeah. If you stay around for the spoiler section, we'll stop dancing around some of this.
We'll definitely get into all that. So yeah, because of that, maybe let's talk about some of the gameplay of the first game, and what you play as Amicia, who has a sling, and with her sling you have just your standard rocks that you can use to bonk things or to solve puzzles. As the game progresses, you get other types of tools that are more like alchemical. So basically,
like different types of ammo.
Well, ammo and like just narrative ways for you to be able to control fire.
Right.
Because fire and rats are like the two pieces of the puzzles in the first game, aside from just like the stealth puzzles with like soldiers and stuff. But the main crux of the game, the thing that makes it kind of different, is there are just hordes of rats everywhere that will just eat anything and anyone alive if they get too close, but they don't like light. So you can push through the rats if you have light. So can soldiers. So, you may put out a torch that a soldier's holding to get him eaten by the rats, and then they're distracted and you can get by, or you may, not be able to cross a room until you push a burning cart through it or whatever.
Yeah.
So that is kind of like the core idea, and it is just like puzzle solving.
Yeah.
But it's in like a really grim kind of gross world with like the sounds of skittering rats in the background, and the risk of if I just step wrong slightly, I may get devoured. And so, your arsenal grows to help you combat that and combat some of the like puzzles that sets up as the game kind of ratchets up. So I thought it was really cool. I don't always like stealth games that are purely stealth, because I like being able to screw up and then still be able to fight my way out. That is not this game, but I think that the setting and the rat idea and the fire and all that was interesting enough that it kept me engaged and not frustrated. The only times I got frustrated, and it's the same for the second game, were like sections that were only soldiers.
Yeah.
Like traditional stealth, throw the rock, run behind them, hide in the grass. Those are fine, but those are also the ones that I most often like would fail at. Yeah. Anytime they would mix rats and people, or anytime it was just you figuring out how to manipulate the rats to be able to get where you need to go or do what you need to do, I was engaged and having fun. And that's not to say I hated the traditional stealth sections, but they were not my favorite.
Right. Well, and I think, like you said, at its core, it is a stealth game. And so with that, you're not supposed to be going in and causing, a scene. But when it was just soldiers, there was so much less that you could do. Like if you were in a mixtures of like soldiers and rats, if a soldier saw you, if you reacted quickly enough, you could like put out that soldier's torch or something, and then the rats would eat the soldier before he could alert the other guards to your presence or something like that. If it's just the rats, like nothing is, like the rats are actively trying to eat you, but as long as you stay in the light, it's not like there's a time crunch. It's not like the guards are patrolling around and you have to like figure out and hope that wherever you hide, there isn't going to be a guard patrol by it that you didn't notice or something. And so I do think that the stealth gameplay was really good. I am also not typically the biggest fan of like a stealth game where you don't have, like I do like Hitman, I do like Dishonored, but both of those games are very much
fail
like
if you get caught. Like it doesn't like reset the level when you get caught.
Like I may reset or like go back to an earlier save just because I want to try to do it like stealthily. Yeah. But if I'm tired of that, or if like those games very much are like, no, I do have the option as, Hitman, Agent 47 to just pull out my gun and shoot somebody if they see me. Like, it'll make me get not quite as high of a score, but sometimes it's like, nah, that's fine.
Yeah, I just want to get through the level. Maybe I'll come back and try to do better now.
Exactly. Like when was my last save? I don't know. And so there is very much like, that is what this game is. And I do think it does a very good job of that. I will agree with you that at times, like sometimes it could get a little just frustrating when it was like, the guards aren't moving like I thought they would, or like I can't. There were some times where I didn't quite know exactly where I was supposed to go to progress in some of those, especially like the only guards sections, because typically, and this is especially true of the second game, they generally will give you 2 or 3 ways to get past the guards, like 2 or 3 paths, basically. And some of them are harder than others, and some of them are just kind of like, am I going the right way? Is this guard looking the right way? Am I supposed to use like a pot to like break a pot here to like get them to walk over? Or is there something in the environment that I'm just missing? Or have I just not waited long enough for them to patrol out of my way? And all of that's like good stealth gameplay. But the cost for messing it up in especially the only guard sections was so high in the first game, especially because basically once a guard sees you, everyone in the area gets alerted, which kind of annoyed me a little bit because I was just like, it makes sense from like the guy closest to him to maybe hear, but if this guard's by himself, why is everyone else from across the camp or whatever coming here? But then there's also like you have no health. If you get caught, like you die in the first game. There are a couple of like little things, like eventually you unlock the ability to like smash a thing on a guard's face and put them to sleep one time, basically.
Right.
If you get caught. But usually it doesn't matter because if you're at the point where guards are chasing you, there's another guard right behind you. So all that to say, like, the stealth could be a little frustrating at times, but no more so than just any stealth game for someone who's impatient.
Yeah, exactly.
So
the things that probably need improvement the most or don't work as well with what the game is when you have to fight head to head.
Yeah.
With either they like to throw armored soldiers at you, and then they like to throw like, oh no, we're at a dead end, so here, you work on opening this door, I'll keep them at bay, which means winding up your sling and getting headshots for the determined amount of time, usually not super long, but long enough that they could get to you if you're not, if you don't nail it. And those sections are like passable. Yeah. They're not super fun. They're not anything special, and sometimes they're actively frustrating, but there's also not that many of them in either game. Yeah,
there's maybe 2 or 3 throughout the entirety of each game, and it's not terrible. Those are definitely some of my least favorite parts as well, like because it, like we said, at its core, it is a stealth game. So as soon as they start being like, no more stealth for you, you have to do the combat, which the game is not necessarily designed around combat because it is a stealth game. It can get a little frustrating just because it's like, if you haven't upgraded your sling, because why would you? Because it's a stealth game. You're not supposed to have to use it. Your fire rate can be slower. And so it's like when they're throwing 2 or 3 guys at you, if you're not perfect on the hitting the headshots, which are not hard, like it snaps to the head. So it's not like it's...
Yeah. It's not like a third person shooter or anything. It's just it's kind of more of like a reaction puzzle.
Yeah.
Than it is like an actual combat section of a game.
Yeah.
But they had them again in the second game, and sometimes those were more frustrating because in the first game it felt like when those happened, they would send a lot of the like guards you could just smack in the head and be done with it, and maybe like one dude with armor that you would have to like, I need to switch it up. Whereas in the sequel it really felt like they would throw like 3 or 4 types of guards at you, so you're like constantly cycling through different ammos or things you need to use or picking stuff up, all while they're just like steadily marching towards you. And there are ways to survive in the second game, which we'll get to here in a minute, but it still was like, if they get to you, you're basically, you have to start over,
Yeah, because the second game, they give you more tools. The second game, the puzzle, like those sections felt more like a puzzle than the first game. Like the first game was literally just like, hey, are you quick enough to get the headshots? The second game was like, now you have a crossbow that kills, any type of enemy one shot. Now you have except the shield guys.
Yeah.
Now you've got all these different types of ammo. Now you've got different types of enemies, like some throw fire back at you. And so like, if you see them, you have to wait until they're about to throw, and then you have to knock the fire out of their hands and onto them so they die. And so it definitely felt like it was more of a puzzle, but like, when you've got these guys, like you said, coming at you, and I think in the second game you could take 2 hits versus just the 1 in the first game.
Right.
But it is still very much like, you don't really, by the time someone is up on you, you've lost. And so adding that pressure and that stress can be frustrating sometimes when it's like, I screwed up this puzzle, now I've got to do it again.
Yep. Let's kind of wrap up our game 1 specific section with just kind of general overall thoughts on the story and kind of the ending how it all was. It satisfying? Did we like it? We'll get into specifics at in the back half, but and if you've already seen our review, you probably kind of know. But how did you feel about the overall experience and how it wrapped up?
Yeah, I thought the first game was really good.
Yeah.
I thought, like I said, I went in not expecting a whole lot, and I was blown away with what I got. The world and the story got its hooks in me, and I was like, this is a really cool story. This is a really cool world.
And the cast of characters I thought in the first game were really good.
Yeah. And just kind of like everything that's going on in the world, and like it's, medieval fantasy, supernatural, like sort of grimdark setting. Yeah. Like all of that seemed really cool to me. And I really enjoyed like learning about and exploring the world and kind of trying to figure out and piece together what was going on. And even though the very, very end, which we'll talk about in the spoiler section, the very, very end of the game, like the final enemy that you fight was annoying.
Yeah. Did you think that the story jumped the shark at all at the end, or like it accelerated to like it felt like a gradual incline and then the end kind of spiked up? Like, did that work for you, or did it feel kind of jarring? For me, it felt a little jarring. And then leading into the second game, it was like, okay, well, this is where they were going. This is what they did with that. Makes sense.
Yeah.
But at the time, especially that just being the one experience, it was like, wow, we just really escalated.
Yeah. It did escalate pretty quickly towards the end of the game. I didn't feel like it jumped the shark necessarily, but it did seem like it did get ratcheted up to 11.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it was necessarily jarring, but it was kind of like, okay, now I guess for me, it felt like we were learning more about what the things that were going on in the first game were. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, now that we they toyed with certain ideas for a good half to 2/3 of the game, and then that final like third of the game they were finally like, okay, now we're going to actually tell you like what this means and what's going on. And it's like, oh, okay, now that I understand this makes sense. It did, it was kind of a little bit ridiculous and over the top. That worked for me. I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
But I am also glad that I didn't have to wait years for a sequel, because the first game does end in a way that very much is like, all right, now we are
there's a very obvious next story.
Yeah,
like they could have just left it there as like this was a story, but it was very much like, okay, but what happens next?
As a story itself, it is complete, but there are definitely like, it doesn't answer every single question. It leaves them room in the first game to continue going, and so knowing that they were continuing and it's like, okay, cool. Like, I'm glad I don't have to wait to see how this story continues very long.
Okay, well, let's take a quick music break. We'll steal that from Tales from the Backlog. And when we come back, we'll shift into our second game, Plague Tale Requiem. All right, so the second game, like we touched on earlier, iterative sequel, a direct sequel, like it picks up immediately where the first game, I mean, there's a slight amount of time that has passed, but nothing significant. And it picks up, Amicia has lost all of her like alchemic tools that she had acquired, which, kind of makes sense. She gets most of them back, or some are some different ones, which is cool. There was the one from the first game that I really missed, was the one that made the guards take their helmets off.
Yeah.
But the first thing that I noticed booting up the game, aside from the fact that it looks amazing and they really improved the faces, like the faces are still a little, not, obviously they're not like God of War or whatever.
Yeah.
Those super high budget games, but they're better than the first one.
Right.
But I had to look and see if they had gotten new voice actors, which they did for Lucas.
Yeah.
Lucas, your friend Lucas, is a different voice actor. And I think the mother, Beatrice, who is in all the like promotional materials, so that's not a spoiler. She has a different actress, but she wasn't in the first one enough for that to really be jarring. Whereas Lucas, you talked to him like a ton in the first game. So it was like, that sounds different, but you could pass it off as he like hit puberty.
Yeah.
But they changed the accents.
Yeah.
There was something special about the first game where it was one of the very few games I've ever played that like took place in France and the characters actually had like French accents. Like they're speaking English, obviously. That's how most games are, but they had like French accents to what they were saying and, you know, how they were delivering their lines. And I was like, oh, this is unique and kind of stood out. Well, they're English now.
Look at Leon. The Guian beast is in a hurry to fight it out.
Your beast thinks with its stomach, as usual.
Well, there's something you both have in common.
That's harsh.
Go on, boy. You'll find the prey. I believe in you.
Don't get your hopes up. Let's keep going.
Be brave, sorcerer. Your fight is far from over.
Your mother's going to wonder where we are.
It's been a long road. You have the right to stretch your legs.
Yes.
Amicia!
In the sequel, they went full on English and I looked it up and it was like, they like changed it to English because that appeals to a broader audience, I guess similar to the Assassin's Creed Unity thing where it's like a focus group thing. But I was like, man, it didn't bug me enough to like really affect the experience, but it was something I immediately noticed like something's off, and I probably wouldn't have if I hadn't just played the first game.
I was gonna say, if you only play the second game or it's been years since you played the first game, like now you'll notice because we just said it, but
right.
But yeah, had I played it 3 years ago and not gone back, I don't know that I would have picked that out immediately, you know?
No. But yeah, I did notice that. I wish that they hadn't done that. But the voice acting was still, you know, top notch, especially, you know, getting towards the end of this second game. Like Amicia, the voice actress for her is like crazy, crazy talented, some of the stuff going on.
It's unfortunate that there will probably be a bunch of God of War nominations for like best voice actress and actor and stuff towards the end of the year, because the person who did this definitely deserves some recognition.
But yeah, other than that, some of the things that are different about this game, just generally speaking, it's a lot longer than the first game, at least double.
Yeah, I'm going to look up How Long to Beat real quick. So according to How Long to Beat, if you're just doing like the main story, in Plague Tale Innocence, it's about 10.5 hours.
Yeah, which is what we said.
Yeah. Requiem is about 16, although I would say main and extra is probably a better... You don't think there's a ton of like extra stuff.
There was no extra stuff really in the first game. Maybe a couple things.
But there's no extra... First game, main and extra is like 12 hours. Second game, main and extra is about 19, because there are several more opportunities in the second game to kind of explore
and poke
broader,
around, talk to people.
Areas.
Yeah.
If you do all of that stuff, it does probably closer to 20 hours. So,
and the first game was like 14 chapters, and the second game was 16 chapters.
Yeah.
So the chapter difference wasn't very much. So I at least felt the chapters felt longer.
Yeah.
Which made the game feel longer, which the game was longer. I don't think it was too long. I don't think it outstayed its welcome, but it was definitely longer, a bigger experience, which makes sense. There were some chapters were quicker than others. I think that the overall structure for this game was a little odd. Like there was a tutorial section, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Then you kind of go into like a city and you spend like a quarter to a third of the game in that city. Then you have to leave that city and you go into like this new area, which felt like the main meat of the game was there.
Yeah.
And then I guess that's about it. And there's like the ending, which is sort of separate, but it felt like that city section was gonna amount to more.
Yeah. Like I can definitely see a world in which Plague Tale Requiem was a smaller game and was wholly set in that first city that you're in, pretty much. And maybe a little bit extra, like maybe some of the...
Because I was thinking it would be the opposite, where maybe the first city was initially just a few chapters, because the bulk of what you're doing with Hugo in the second game revolves around that second location.
I guess I'm thinking like early on in its development, maybe they hadn't figured out that whole what you're doing with Hugo, and so it was more contained to like a city sort of thing, and then it blows out into this other stuff, because it was a very big departure from like what you're used to and it's not a bad departure. I think it's a cool part, but I want to say there was a shift during development to say like, oh, it's bad, or it's not like a unified vision or something, but like it does feel distinct and longer, you know.
And it feels like there's two distinct like halves to this game.
Exactly.
Like part 1 and part 2 kind of.
Yeah.
With a neat little bridge in between.
Exactly. Exactly.
So we talked about earlier the iterative steps they made in gameplay with like the crossbow, different kinds of ammo.
Yeah, because what are the big changes? One of the big changes is you have a crossbow, which...
You have a couple get out of jail free cards is kind of how I used it.
Yeah, because like the crossbow, you generally have like 2 or 3 shots with it. I think you can
start with
that.
2 and you can get 3 or maybe 4.
I think you can get... Yeah, I forget exactly how many you can get total, but you can also get a thing that lets you take arrows out of, or bolts out of
the enemies.
Dead enemies.
Killed,
And so the crossbow does make you much more proactive and aggressive in time. Like if enemies do notice you and there aren't just like a billion of them, if there's 2 or 3 enemies, basically the crossbow is like, well, I got noticed, I guess I'm going to kill them.
What I like off the top of my head, the difference is, especially in like the actual moment to moment gameplay, you have knives you can pick up, which lets you kill an enemy if they get up on you. Amicia can slap an enemy across the face to try to get away once.
Yeah.
The arsenal you have with your alchemic kind of like bombs and things you can attach to your crossbow bolts or your slingshot are slightly different. And then you have just way more. There were at least 3 or 4 stealth sections that I botched and was able to run to the door and get to the next, like succeed and get through that part.
Right.
Which you could not do in Innocence.
No, Innocence was basically like it cut to a cutscene and you died immediately.
Right.
Whereas this does give you more of an opportunity to just be like, oh shoot, let's run.
And some of that comes from the stealth sections are bigger.
Yeah. And
you can approach them a lot more. Like there are a lot of different ways you can approach them. And so because of that, I mean, the first one very much felt like this is a puzzle. Yeah. There's a way to solve it, and then you'll get to the other side. This one is like there's lots of solutions, so if one of them happens to fail, you could potentially still run, which I did a couple times.
Yeah, and it gives you way more tools, I feel like, to deal with the situation.
Yes, but it also throws more crap at you.
Yes, because they give you... It's kind of like... I guess how I thought about it was like the Batman games, right, where it's like you're starting off and you've got like just your regular old goons. And so it's just like you go in, you punch them, you counter them. Then it starts sprinkling in like, okay, these guys have knives. Okay, these guys have guns. Okay, these guys have this or that or whatever. And you start having to like do like, okay, I've got to take out this guy, but I've got to do it I've got to swing my cape in his face to stun him first. And then and that does feel like how this game goes, is like you start off and it's like pretty manageable. And then as they start giving you more and more tools, they start giving you more and more guys that are countered by the tools they just gave you. And you've got to figure out like, okay, now when they're throwing this guy at me, I've got to, I can't just do this regular thing. I've got to like throw oil on the ground first and then burn him up or something like that. Or I've got to figure out how to break his shield first, so that I can get his shield out of the way so then I can kill him or whatever it is. So
right. I think the other big thing that they did gameplay wise that kind of shook things up, and this was, you had these in the first game, but they really made it much more of an emphasis is companions.
Yeah. Because like in the first game, you would have like Lucas or, some of the other people along with you. But for the most part, they didn't really like do anything. They were kind of just there with you.
They would help
were
you
an
pull
extra
levers and stuff occasionally, but that's about it.
Yeah, they were mostly just like an additional like, oh, okay, like in this puzzle, we've got 3 people that all need to get to this door, and
Right.
we've got to pull the levers in a certain way in order to get them there. And they still do a lot of that kind of stuff in the second game. But a lot of your companions in the second game actually have like things that they do, which they did add some characters towards the end of the first game that like did a little bit more. Like the what was his name? Roderick.
Yes.
At the end of the first game,
he could
kill people.
Yeah, he was like the prototype for one of the companions here, it feels like, where you could tell him and he would go like just straight up dispatch a guard, which could be really helpful. And they have a companion in this game who has been in the like promotional material and stuff who does that and can just straight up fight for you. And those sections felt like, take a break. Enjoy this however long this lasts, where you don't have to be quite as careful.
Exactly.
You have the dude whose name is literally what they call him, the shield or the tower
wall.
or the wall. Yeah. And so, yeah, he could just go out there. If he was fighting a guard, he was going to win.
Yeah.
If a couple of them ganged up on him, he might lose, but you could pop them in the head with rocks while they're distracted by him. And so I thought that was really cool. There are a couple other companions we'll dive into more in the back half that were useful, had different tricks up their sleeve.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know there was another, I want to call her the Sea Snake, but I've just watched A House of the Dragon. And so I'm like, is that actually what she was called in this game? Or is that just what I'm remembering from House of the Dragon? What's the girl's name?
She was a huge part of this game, and yeah, I cannot remember her name.
Sophia.
Sophia.
She had like this power that would allow you to like set grass on fire or something to provide like a distraction, or she could like focus light in the area around you to like create some light so that you could get through rat sections without a torch or something like that.
Yeah.
So there were a lot more like cool things that like changed up sort of the gameplay experience. It felt like
I like that they used the sticks a lot less in this game. Like they were still there, but there were only a few of them, so they didn't get annoying. Like they didn't get old. Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah.
So the companions were cool. In general, I liked them. I liked how they kind of changed up the flow of the gameplay and like what your based on which companion you had, which you didn't get to pick it. It was like narratively decided for you, but that kind of determined the strategies that you could or should use at that point.
And none of them felt like they overstayed their welcome either. It wasn't like...
No, although one of them dominated most of the game, it felt like.
Yeah, you definitely had one that stayed with you for a while, but then it never felt like they were there too long, or that they relied too heavily on like the puzzles. It was always like a cool extra option, Yeah.
And a lot of times it was just so that the characters had somebody to talk to. I remember hearing somebody complaining about how much the characters talked in this game. I didn't really notice that or find that to be a problem. I feel like they talked a lot in the first game too.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. People complained about that with Horizon this year too, so maybe that's just like the new thing in the industry to whine about.
Yeah, like look, if you don't want to intake a story or have like conversation going on, like you can play the game on mute, or you can turn character voices all the way off.
Play a different kind of game.
if you're coming into a story game and being like, but I don't want them to talk. There are stories that can be told without the characters talking and interacting, but that's not generally how games, movies, TV shows, anything like that is made.
Right. So same thing. Overall thoughts on the story and ending.
Yeah. This one's going to be a lot harder to talk about.
Yeah. Generally, it's good.
Yeah.
It was a good experience.
I thought this game was good.
They went for something. I think they nailed it. Like they had a vision. They saw it through. I think it's one of those games that has an impactful story and ending that is something people will talk about.
Yeah.
It might not be something that they liked, but it was like a specific choice and direction from the writers that they saw through.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a very good game. I think overall, like just gameplay wise, ton of improvements. There wasn't anything besides, like you said earlier, the thing that made the guards take their helmet off that I missed from the first game. Like in general,
Right, yeah.
all of the things that they added felt better and felt like improvements. All the little things that they've changed felt like improvements. Story wise, I liked it. I thought it was a good story. I thought they did some very interesting things, and I felt like they did a lot that kind of puts you in the shoes of Amicia, which I thought was cool. So I think overall it was really good. And like Andrew said, I definitely think it won't get talked about a ton probably because the industry seems determined to ignore this game as well.
Right.
But people who play it, I do think they're going to be like, it's a story that's worth talking about, which we will do in a little bit here. So
Yeah. Pretty much right now, we'll take another little break, and then when we come back, this is your spoiler warning. If you have not played these games, go do it, then come back.
you're looking at like 15 or 20, 25 hours for both of them. And one of them is on Game Pass currently.
Yep.
Requiem.
The first one was.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that they took Innocence off and then put Requiem on. I'd like to see both of them. Microsoft, Phil Spencer, not the Filipino. Buy Asobo. Go ahead and just buy them.
I know they make Flight Sim,
Yeah,
so
just buy them.
Just bring them in-house.
Put both games on Game Pass. Give them away for free. Let people experience these games. Recommend them. Install them automatically on everyone's Xbox.
Yeah, like that U2 album.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, we'll listen to a little bit of music, and then we'll be back with spoilers. All right, spoilers.
Man,
Let's.
there's a lot to talk about now that we can talk about the spoilers.
We'll start with the first game.
Yeah.
There were a few moments to touch on, but the bulk of this conversation will be about Requiem, probably.
Yeah. So first game, like the quick synopsis is the game kicks off with the Inquisition killing your family, or so you think.
Right.
And then Amicia and Hugo are running basically the entire time, trying to stay ahead of the Inquisition, stay ahead of the rat plague.
Well, and you know that there's something wrong with Hugo. He's got
Yeah.
this weird kind of
Blood disease.
illness, that leaves like these marks on his body. And so Amicia doesn't really see him much. And so initially you're trying to get to this alchemist that can maybe help him. Your mom tells you about him right before you think she dies. Lucas works for that alchemist, and so that's how you come across him.
Yes.
And then once you meet him, then the goal kind of shifts from running to trying to figure out what's going on with Hugo.
Right. Right. You learn that Hugo has been infected with a disease called the macula. He is a carrier of this, which they don't really know a ton about, but there are like certain thresholds that can happen, and he is the one that is like attracting the rats.
Which I don't think they initially know.
Okay.
I think they...
I forget when they find, like, I thought they knew that the rats had something to do with the macula, but they didn't know like how, like that he himself was kind of calling them or something.
I think about the time where Lucas and Amicia are like back at her home and they're finding all the like black gross stuff is where they tie all that together. Initially, they just think it's a plague.
Right.
Which it is.
Yeah.
But in this universe, these plagues happen because of the macula.
Right. Right. And so it's something that he grows more powerful and it could kill him, and so they're trying to find like some medicine to deal with the macula. Like they're not really sure what it does, but the Inquisition wants him. The Inquisition wants to capture him and not kill him, and so they get captured by some soldiers where they meet a couple of their other companions. And then at some point, Hugo gets captured.
Well, yeah, so they make it to this castle.
Yeah.
Which kind of becomes your base of operations, and you spend a lot of the game going with a particular person to find something to help Hugo.
Yeah. And it might be Lucas, it might be, I forget the girl's name, Melly?
Yeah.
She's like
she's also looking
girl.
for her brother who got captured.
Yeah. And so you're kind of going in trying to, you have to find like some alchemical ingredients. You have to find like a book that has like a recipe for some sort of alchemical mixture.
Yeah.
You've got to like, so you go in and you do these things from like home base.
But as you're doing them, Melly finds out that her brother is still alive and goes to rescue him. And then you find out that Mom is still alive. But Amicia doesn't want Hugo to find out. He overhears, and that's how he gets captured. He runs away because he wants to go save his mom.
Right.
So they get him, and then Amicia has to go rescue him. That's where Hugo learns that he can control the rats, is when he's rescuing his mom.
Yeah, because there's like there's some sort of like cardinal or bishop or something from the Catholic Church that gets involved, and it's like he's injecting himself with macula blood and he's trying to become like the macula carrier or something so that he can control rats, and he's got like these specially bred rats that only he can control or something.
Yeah, it's like he has like a fake macula that he's using, and that's what he's put his rats, and they're white. And so he wants Hugo so that he can actually have the full power of the macula, and he ends up getting it, right? That's how at the end you have the ridiculous fight.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's kind of the main villain of the first game.
Yeah. And so eventually it all boils down to like there's the city that like you go to multiple times throughout the game that is basically just like getting its teeth kicked in.
Yeah.
It deteriorates. Eventually, by the end of the game, there's basically like no civilians left. It's just like covered in rats and soldiers. And you eventually wind up in some church and you fight the cardinal guy.
Yeah.
You rescue Hugo and his mom, and Amicia's mom, I guess. And you have to like stun the rats that surround the guy long enough so that you could like hit him with your slingshot, and you have to do that multiple times. That's the worst part of that game.
Yeah,
that boss fight.
That boss fight took me way longer this playthrough than the first time, or at least I remember.
Yeah.
And that's the part that I feel like kind of jumped the shark, where it was like all of a sudden we're having like a waves of rats battle.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like silly.
Yeah. It was definitely a bit silly.
But it sets up how, as Hugo's power grows, the rats exponentially get way worse.
Yeah.
Which sets up the second game. I think before we shift into the second game, probably like the standout moments of the first game that are like spoilery is that your mom didn't actually die.
Yeah. Like that, you go through at least like 2/3 of the game thinking
she
she's
comes
dead.
back way later.
Yeah. Because you go back to Amicia's home, and like from the beginning of the game. And you find like the bodies of people, but you don't find her mom.
Yeah, you see the servant.
And then you see like the priest or the servant or something that like helped you get out. You see his dead body where you thought your mom died. And so then it's like, oh, is mom alive? And then you find out that like, yes, she is. So that was a big loop.
And in that same section where you rescue your mom, you play as Hugo. First, you're doing stealth.
Yeah.
Like pure stealth. He has no tools. You're like running between these guys' legs, essentially.
Right.
Which if that had gone on any longer, would have been bad. It was a nice little change of pace for as long as it lasted.
Yeah. Because it's one of those things where it's like at the point where it happens in the game, Amicia basically has her full arsenal. And so they are taking you down to you have nothing again. And it's just, which is good in like a
change of pace.
And it, you know, makes you feel a little bit helpless again. Because by the end of the game, like you kind of feel like, okay, I know what I'm doing. I feel like I'm a little bit powerful. I feel like I have the tools to like handle whatever it throws at me. And so it's like, nope, you have nothing. You're just a little like, I forget I think Amicia's like 14 and Hugo's like 5 or 6. So yeah, I mean like he's a child, like barely older than a toddler, you know?
Yeah, and he's
like,
super stupid and annoying at the beginning of the game. But as the game goes on, he gets a little bit smarter and like he's relatable.
Yeah.
He's not just like a one-dimensional stupid kid.
Yeah.
Like, he has layers, but like in the beginning, he's just this whiny little brat that is crying for mom all the time. And you're like, oh, this is going to be a long game. But they do a good job of like developing all the characters.
Yeah. Because, which is another reason why the person who complained that the characters talk to each other is confusing to me. Because that's how the story progresses. Is like we talked about earlier. Like Amicia basically has never seen Hugo. Like Hugo and her mom pretty much stayed locked up in his chambers. And so Amicia pretty much doesn't know her mom, doesn't know Hugo, sees them occasionally, but really doesn't know them. Hugo doesn't know her. Hugo pretty much has never been outside, I don't think. And so you kind of get to this point where it's like, you know, he's being a whiny little brat who just wants mom because that's all he's ever known.
Right.
And he's never been outside. So yeah, he thinks seeing a rabbit is awesome. He thinks flowers are the coolest. And Amicia is just like, I'm 14 and like I've never dealt, like not only am I not prepared for anything that's going on, but like I don't know how to like take care of a child. I'm frustrated too. And so like there's a lot of character development that happens there, which is really cool.
Yeah, which leads into the second game. As you play as Hugo in the first game, you control the rats to a limited degree.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. And that also leads into the second game, so we can kind of transition.
Yeah. Well, the last thing I want to talk about is, like we mentioned earlier, like this game is not afraid to pull punches.
Oh, right. Yeah.
In the sort of finale of the game, like the Inquisition, like has captured Hugo. They're, you know, forcing him to do their will by torturing or threatening to kill his mom. And so the Inquisition like shows up, the big like bad night guy shows up to attack you in your like the castle that was kind of your home base. And he shows up with Hugo, who's controlling all the rats. And so you are there with like your other child companions. Like I don't know their exact ages, but like I don't think any of them are over the age of 18. You've got Melly and her brother and Lucas and Roderick. And so you're all there. And
the fact that you say Melly's brother is telling, because he's not there for very long. He was an easy one for them to pick off. He like gets killed. Which that one I kind of expected, because it's like, okay, we don't really know this guy. He's like an easy one and he's probably the oldest to the closest to adulthood.
Yeah.
Next to maybe Roderick.
And then, so once that happens, like Hugo and all, like you basically are like, okay, now we're going to go try to take out this like cardinal guy. We're going to go try to rescue our mom. Like we're going into the town.
They know it's kind of like a suicide mission. Like, we're either going to succeed at this or we're all dead.
Exactly. And so as you're doing that, Roderick is protecting you and Hugo, and he sacrifices himself. Like there's a point where there are a bunch of archers, and so he's pushing like this cart because for you and Hugo to take cover behind. And like by the end, he gets hit a couple of times, and then like as he gets to the very end, he like lifts up a portcullis or whatever for everyone else to get through. And then he gets like shot one more time, or, you know, his wounds finally get the best of him, and he doesn't join you and he dies there. And it's like, oh man. And so there was just a lot of like, oh man, like these are kids and like they're not scared to just kill off a character that you've been with for like half the game. So
Yeah. Yeah, they're not pulling any punches,
yeah.
which goes doubly so for Requiem. But we can start maybe with a little bit lighter fare. Some of the big moments. I mean, it starts out brutal with like that whole farm situation.
Yeah, because like the first game ends with you guys like traveling. Your mom and Lucas and Amicia and Hugo traveling to like find more help for Lucas or for Hugo. It picks up while they're still on the road to like do that. It's probably been like a few weeks, a month, something like that. It's been a little bit of time, enough for it to be like...
It's been long enough that Amicia is like, oh yeah, I remember when we had to make this Ignis stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, it's been probably a few months. And so it starts off in like this family of outlaws, basically, or like they're beekeepers, but they also seem like they...
It's like the beekeepers have been antagonized by these raiders or something.
Yeah.
To the point where they're just like killing anybody that comes on their property.
Yeah.
And you happen to be on their property.
Yes, exactly. Like you're just wandering around exploring, and like eventually Amicia ends up having to like kill somebody there too. As she's constantly forced to do.
Yeah, and it's definitely taking a toll on her mental state.
Yeah, because she's definitely dealing with like some PTSD type of stuff, even from like the beginning of this game, like that tutorial level. Like Lucas goes and does something which ends up with Lucas getting captured, which is why Amicia has to rescue him and eventually end up killing somebody, I think.
In the beekeeper?
Yeah.
No, that's
later.
That was like the little brother that they were playing with in the river.
Okay, yeah.
They're like beating the crap out of him because he wasn't where he was supposed to be, and so yeah, they kill the brothers.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's like just kind of your tutorial, like, oh yeah, you guys thought this might have been happy, just kidding, it's not. Then you end up in like a town.
Yeah, which seems nice at first, and like things typically go in this game, in these games. It seems nice, and then like the more that you learn, the more it's like, oh, this is all just like a facade, or it's not going to stay nice. And so eventually they're like looking for the head alchemist guy to help Hugo. And in exploring, they come across like a section of the city that's closed off mysteriously.
The arena
is
just like full of all this people who have died from the sickness.
Yeah, and so they go in and they're like, oh, whenever like this is like a plague holding quarters where they just put plague people here to die. And
yeah,
that's where rats come back, and that's where you eventually find like the head alchemist, who's kind of a dick.
Yeah, he's a jerk.
And pretty much is like torturing Hugo, essentially.
Which drives a wedge between Amicia and her mother, which is kind of a through line for this whole game.
Yeah. And then the rats come back officially. And it was so much bigger than...
Yeah, I think they said in the first game there were like thousands of rats on screen at a time. In this game, it's like hundreds of thousands of rats on screen at a time.
Yeah.
And they're like leveling cities.
There's a point where like the rats come back in full force, and Amicia is just running from essentially a tidal wave of rats like down through the city. Like in the past, it was like, oh, you know, like the rats have always kind of behaved like fluid.
It was like one layer.
But it was like one layer on the ground. And then this game, it's just like a wave of them coming down like a street or something.
And those
like
sections
that.
I thought were really cool. Like they're very cinematic and set piece, but they were tense and they were like exciting.
Yeah.
And they weren't frustrating.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a very cool experience. Very horrifying, but cool. And so eventually, like, this is, I guess, Hugo approaching the second threshold, which we still don't really understand what that means. Like,
Yeah, how many thresholds are
Yeah.
there?
but it ends with the city destroyed, basically. The rats,
And Hugo realizes this is his fault,
yeah,
which is also another through line of this game, is that he's starting to understand that all these deaths are because of what's going on with him and the macula.
right. And so they flee the city with some guy on a boat. I forget his name.
Yeah.
He seemed like he was going to be really cool.
Until he takes an arrow to the face.
Yeah, and then he gets killed pretty quickly. And so you're running from soldiers. I guess they're called like the Duke's men or something.
Yeah,
Like,
and that's where you meet Arno.
yeah.
When he
So you,
bashes Amicia in the head.
so you're running from them, and at some point, like the big head soldier dude is coming to like kill Amicia and her family, basically, because there was a point where she killed a bunch of his men. She basically had like a mental break and was just like, I'm tired of running. Like,
Yeah.
I'm tired of being attacked. Like, I'm going to kill a bunch of people. And so she did. And then turns out like guy holds a grudge.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And then I think, is it right after that where Amicia pushes their mom and Lucas down the river?
yeah. So like up through like the first half of the game, Hugo talks about like this consistent dream that he's been having, and you play part of this dream at some point early on. And he's having this dream of like this bird that shows him this island that's got like these two like mountain peaks on it, and he gets in the water there and it cures him. And so he is, like a 5-6-year-old hung up on this dream. And so Amicia just got through watching the guy her mom brought in, the doctor, torture her brother or hurt him in her mind. And so she's like, no, that's not happening anymore. And so she gets hit over the head, but she defeats the guy, like drives them back. I guess she gets hit over the head, and Hugo finally cracks and like brings
Calls
the rats forth, and chases everybody off. And so he's on land with Amicia, and Amicia, or her mom and Lucas are still on the boat.
Yeah.
And so she kind of like cuts the rope that was keeping them tied there and lets them kind of go off. And she decides in that moment, like, no, like I'm going to take Hugo and we're going to find this island because I'm not letting you hurt him anymore.
Which narratively makes sense, but that scene was kind of stupid. It's like, okay, how deep is this water?
Yeah.
It's not rushing. They just like kind of float away, and it's like, all right. I mean, I know why we're doing this, and I like where we're headed. Could have maybe
Right.
put a little bit more like intensity in this, but yeah.
Yeah. And so at that point, that's where like the second half of the game kind of kicks off, where you meet Arno. Like basically Amicia faints, and Arno, the wall, finds her and Hugo and rescues them.
Yeah, because there's like a wave of rats in this canyon, and her head injury has really got her messed up. The
Exactly.
head injury that he gave her.
Well, Arno didn't give it to her.
I thought he did.
No, it's like the Duke's. He's on the other side of the. He was like an English dude.
I thought that's why Amicia hated him so much, was because he was like, they don't have a good relationship at first. And the only reason that he rescued them was because he saw what Hugo did with the rats.
So later on in the game, Arno is like, the Duke, him and his men killed my son. And so I thought Arno was.
Yeah, Arno wants to kill the Duke.
Yeah, well, the Duke's men are the ones that are chasing you throughout the first half of the game.
Right.
So I guess, and at some point they talk about like that battlefield from the first game with all the dead soldiers. And I thought Arno was kind of implying that he was like on the other side, like there was the French side and like the English side. I thought he was implying that he was on the English side of that, the losing side or whatever.
Yeah, I guess I didn't fully understand who he was.
Yeah. So I thought that's who I could be wrong.
But
on that,
Amicia
but I
didn't
don't-
trust him or like him at all.
No, I think she just didn't at that point didn't trust people.
Gotcha.
Was how I took it, but
Hey everybody, future editor Andrew here, and I just wanted to point out that Dylan is wrong in this part, and yes, Arno was the one in the beginning who bashed Amicia in the head and gave her the head wound, and that is in fact why she does not trust him. I went back, I looked it up, watched some videos, sent Dylan a couple links to prove to him that he was in fact wrong about this, so feel free to hop in our Discord and also reprimand him for his mistakes. All right, back to the episode.
but he's like some sort of mercenary / disgraced soldier / he was on the losing side of something.
Yeah, I think he was like he ran from battle or something.
Yeah,
But yeah,
which you find out later, his son was killed,
right.
which is what kind of broke him.
But he's really cool, like we touched on earlier, gameplay-wise. I really like that section because it was a nice change of pace.
Yeah,
And I like the dynamic between the characters.
he very much seems like he's going to fall into that archetype of like kind of grumpy old man who
Right.
inherits some kids that like he becomes kind of like the father figure too, almost, which in a way he kind of does for a bit of the game at times.
Yeah.
But he helps you find Sophia, who is like a smuggler who agrees to take you on her ship to find the island, because I guess they just know that it wasn't really explained. Like,
Well,
I didn't trust that they were going to take us to the island, but they did. I thought they were just kind of BSing of like, oh yeah, I know that island.
well, because he keeps describing the island as having like two teeth.
Yeah.
So I think the two mountains, like the people that actually know the region, are like, oh, you're talking about.
Yeah.
They named it. I can't remember what the name was.
Right.
I didn't trust Sophia basically up to the end of the game. I don't know if it's because
Yeah.
of the way they animated her face or like the way they would like linger on her after
Yeah.
certain things had happened.
Yeah. Well, and I think that touches on what I think the game did so well, was like it essentially put you in Amicia's shoes, which is like so many people have like betrayed her or like destroyed her trust, like even her own mom.
Yeah.
And so it keeps introducing, like, it starts introducing you to these other characters in that second half of the game. And you're like, you seem cool, but I don't trust you.
Oh, I 100% did not trust the Count, or
Yeah.
like that whole thing was cult from the beginning. And I was
Yeah.
like, this is going to end badly.
And so I think it did a really good job of that, though, where it's kind of like you're constantly like waiting for the other shoe to drop throughout this game, where it's kind of like, this seems nice, but I know it's not good. Like, I don't feel like it's going to stay this way.
Yeah.
And Sophia definitely felt like that right up until like the end of the game, where it's like, okay, I guess she is pretty cool.
Yeah. She's like family now.
But you know, because they get to the island with Arno, and then it turns out that he's basically, he saw what Hugo can do with the rats, and so he brings Hugo to kill the Count, who is like the head of this island. And so like he betrays you, and Amicia and Hugo have to run away. They eventually come back and like help the Count capture Arno, who has betrayed them, because like, we can't trust anybody. And that's how you meet the Count and his wife.
Two psycho characters.
Yes. So they,
Who, start out seeming really friendly and hospitable and like, oh, this is a paradise.
yeah, because it's, you know, the island is nice. It seems untouched by issues.
But as soon as you get off the boat, everybody's like, oh, welcome to the festival of the Child of Light or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, like it's definitely very cultish, but it's just kind of like, okay, these people are a little weird, but like they seem happy. They haven't done anything negative yet, but
The
I do
city's
feel-
still standing.
Yeah. And then like in a couple of the interactions that you have with like the Count and his wife, it seems like they genuinely like care about like the good of their people and stuff. You know, it seems like their hearts are in the right place for the most part. Their religion seems a bit weird, but you know. And then the further you get down into it, the more that you learn and explore, the more that this is where you really kind of find out about the macula and like the overarching kind of cyclical lore that has kind of existed in the game. This is also like the longest point in any of these games that really goes with like a peaceful setting.
Yeah.
Because like you get to this island and like you have to run very briefly when Arno betrays the Count or betrays you guys. But then like the Count takes you in and his wife's like, they're just kids, like let them in. And you're guests of the Count. It opens up into like this semi-open world. You can explore a bunch of the island. And then you start, going down into like you're trying to figure out. You find a map that has like 3 sections kind of marked. And so you explore those 3 sections. And that's where you start to really be like, something's way off about this.
About their cult, but also about like the order. And like you said, there was a carrier in the past, like the long distant past, who also had a protector trying to look out for him. And so you realize that, like Hugo's not the first.
Right. Like Hugo's not the first. There's always kind of like this carrier protector dynamic.
And the order is always right there, kind of like trying to control. And
you're not really sure why. And because like the first way that they introduce this is in like this big like ceremony that they're having for the child or whatever. And so it's kind of these cult people's interpretation of what they think all of this means. And so you explore kind of back in there, like you go through the ritual, you kind of hear what they think it means. And then you explore in the back and you're like, okay, like here's where the kid lived. Here's where the protector was. It seemed like a good thing. And then they find like a room where it was clear that they were like doing experiments or something on like the kid. And then it's kind of like, that's where Hugo kind of gets upset and it's just like, they weren't helping him. They were hurting him. Just like I got hurt sort of thing. And it's like, it never stays the same. It never stays safe. It never stays good.
Yeah. It always goes bad.
Yeah. And he's really kind of recognizing like, well, maybe I deserve it almost because like I'm killing people with some of this. And so at that point, he's kind of like, because I guess they found the tree from his vision in that section too. And like he got in the water and it didn't do anything. And so he kind of gets disheartened because he's like, I thought this was going to fix me. But Amicia is still convinced that like they're going to find something on this island that's going to help. And so you go and you explore this other place where you find a bunch of slavers who are killing people to basically like bring the rats because they think the rats are going to bring the child, which they kind of did, but not in the way that the cult thought it was going to happen.
Right. It was a little bit reversed.
And so you explore in there and you find where like they held the protector prisoner so that they could do something to like the child.
Right.
And so you end up fighting your way out of there. And then the rats show up and basically are covering the island. And so then you go into like this big underground area that you find a way into. And that's where you find out that like the carrier in the past was basically locked away because they couldn't like figure out what to do with him. And they killed his protector. And he is basically like...
And he snapped.
Yeah, he snapped and created all the rats and the plague and everything.
Yeah.
And so at that point, they're just like, oh, this is terrible. Like, but they still are convinced, they still think like, well, this is because they separated them. This is because they killed the protector.
Amicia is still stuck on that train of thought that, that the protector could have done something. So her goal is to get them like just into the mountains where they can just live a peaceful life. Yeah,
just get away from everything. And hopefully, like, if they can stay together, like, there's a aspect of the macula and the plague and the rats where like when Hugo's calm, it's not really as noticeable or as big or something like that.
Right.
And so there's this idea that like, well, if we can just get away from everything and hide out and just live a peaceful life, maybe it'll be chill.
And then the mom and like they're about to leave when they get a soldier tells them that their mom and Lucas are there.
Yeah.
So they go back to get them and then they're planning to leave when the Count comes in to talk to Amicia and take her and like show her something, this is a part that I want to park on.
Yeah.
So did you think that the Count was real? Like, did you think that this wasn't going to be a trap?
I mean, I felt like something was going to happen, but I guess I didn't know how it was going to happen.
Like they may have both gotten attacked by rats or something.
Yeah. Like I wasn't quite sure exactly what was going to happen there. And like, you know, like I talked about earlier, I think this game does a good job of like kind of putting you in the shoes of Amicia. So like I didn't really trust the Count, but I was also like a little bit hopeful that maybe like we could work some stuff out.
The thing about this section, so what happens is the Count like kicks Amicia down some stairs or whatever, and
yeah,
it's like
dislocates her shoulder.
Yeah, which was brutal. Like this was where the voice actor for Amicia was like just giving it 11 out of 10.
Yeah,
it was brutal from this point forward. Like that performance. I mean, it was good the whole way through, but it was like over the top here, and I appreciated so much the like cat and mouse running away from him and like dodging and stuff. And then as soon as they made me have to like pull those levers to like open the door, that part I thought was annoying. But it like I didn't fail it. Well, I might have failed it once.
Yeah.
And
where it's kind of like you have to pull the like you can't do it quick enough. You have to like pull the lever and then he comes over and you have to like lose him again in like this big storeroom that you're in, and then you have to go back and pull the lever again, that part.
Yeah, and then like ideally like what you're supposed to do is trap him in one of those closets.
Oh, okay. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, you can run in there and he'll follow you, and then you zip out the wall. There's like a hole in the wall, and then you can close the door and lock it behind him.
Oh,
and he can eventually kick his way out. But that gave me enough time to run to the lever across from that room and get it up and get out. So that sequence from a gameplay perspective I thought was cool, being unique, but I didn't love it.
Yeah.
But I thought that like what was happening and the performances were incredible.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And then you get to the part where the wife, the Countess, I don't remember her name.
Yeah, because like
the Count is doing this all out of love for her. Like he kind of fabricated this whole religion because she had a mental break at some point.
Yeah,
I
think she like lost a child or couldn't have childs or something like that.
Yeah,
children, and so like so in order to like help her, he kind of like
he took all the stuff that already existed on this island.
Yeah.
Because of the previous like macula situation and crafted this like cult out of it, all centered around her becoming the mother of this like chosen child or whatever.
Right.
And
just to kind of like help give her something, which like had they not shown up probably would have continued to work fine, but they showed up, and rightly so. They were like, hey, this is the kid. And so
kind of kicked things into high gear.
Yeah. So while he is chasing Amicia around, his wife is like preparing to ritually sacrifice their actual mom so that she can become the new mom.
And this part was so symbolic of this whole series because Amicia and the Count end up there.
Yeah.
And before Beatrice, the mom, is sacrificed, Amicia has like this, what in any other show or movie or whatever would have been a breakthrough of like raw emotional power or whatever, where she triumphantly yells, "I am Amicia Darun," and goes after the Count with a sword. And in any other kind of medium, not any other, but in a more uplifting story,
one with a happy ending,
she would have dispatched the Count and rescued her mom.
You never fight to defend yourself. Fight to kill, to conquer.
Whatever. You're still a coward.
Who do you think you are to defy me?
I'm Amicia Darun.
Shut up.
And I kneel to no one.
Shut up!
No. Amicia.
In this story, the Count kicks the shit out of her.
Yeah.
And they slit the mom's throat.
Yes.
So they brought her back just to kill her, which I thought was kind of crazy because she didn't
die in the first game, and then she comes back in the second game, and instead of killing her where they could have earlier, they just like send her down river, and then she shows up again.
Yeah.
And then like 10, 15 minutes, maybe 30 if you screwed up some of the parts of
Right.
the count fight. Like she's dead again.
For real this time. And I'm like, they didn't even give her, like, she didn't develop as a character.
No.
She didn't reconcile with Amicia, really. Like, they had a moment where they were like, they both kind of acknowledged that the other one was doing what they thought was best for Hugo. So they, you know, they sort of had a moment of reconciliation, but like the relationship never really grew. Her as a character, you never really knew her. And they just brought her back to trigger Hugo, I guess.
Yeah.
Because he happens to come out of bed and witness this and see his mom dead and Amicia like basically dead, because they very like John Wicked right over this, but she got slashed in like both her legs and her stomach by the count.
Yeah.
And like in the next few scenes, she's like not really acknowledging that.
Yeah.
But you know.
Yeah. She's like limping along, and like it's kind of like, I guess you could explain away like he was toying with her. He wasn't trying to like kill her. Maybe there was some hope that like they could keep her prisoner as to like use against Hugo or something.
Well, I think he was gonna kill her, but then the Countess stopped him.
Yeah.
So, but then Hugo pops up and you play as him just destroying everybody.
He gets pissed, controls the rats even crazier than he did in the
kill
first
every
game.
single guard.
Yeah.
And then kill the Countess
in
front of the Count, which triggers him.
Yes.
Now he's on a revenge tour.
And like as all this is going on, like there are millions of rats at this point, and the city is like collapsing. Like I don't know if like they're tunneling or something, and like I guess they tunnel around.
Yeah, they were underground in that
and so
crypt.
like they're collapsing all of the like infrastructure of the town basically.
Because there were all the rats that were underground when you were exploring. All the rats, they're already on the surface, but then there were all those like sacks of rats that were sleeping that you disturbed and woke up. And so this island is doomed. Yeah. So you end up escaping, finding Arno and rescuing him.
Yeah, because it turns out they hadn't had time to kill him yet.
They're getting ready to execute him in the middle of all this, which I thought was kind of silly pacing.
Yeah, it was kind of just like, it seems like there are bigger things on your plate right now,
right.
But, whatever, you guys do you. And so you rescue Arno, who's like, I mean, fine, I guess.
Yeah.
I'll help you. And so you get to...
Well, he apologizes, and they make up.
Yeah, you do get a little bit of closure with him.
Yeah, because when he ultimately sacrifices himself...
Yeah.
It felt bad, he was a friend again.
Yeah. Because like you eventually get to Sophia's ship and you sail away and you think like, okay, we're, home free.
They think that.
Nope.
You as the player just witness what you witness, and you're like, yeah, this isn't gonna, like, I knew it wasn't gonna end well. I didn't necessarily see the full breadth of the ending coming, but I was like, oh man, there's no way they just got away. And they didn't. The Count had a faster boat.
Yeah, the Count shows up with his faster boat, which is like, oh, really? But so they fight. Amicia gets shot.
Yeah, but like in her side.
Yeah, like in her side, I guess it misses vital organs or whatever.
Well, yeah, like in her stomach, but like the far side of her stomach, where it's like, okay, I could plausibly see how somebody could survive that. Hugo does not, though. He thinks she's dead.
Yeah,
she goes down. She
goes down, passes out. Like they sink the ship. The Count takes Hugo. They're in the middle of the ocean, so Hugo has no rats to control, which like to me, I'm just like, so let him live out there. Like it seems like
get a houseboat.
Yeah, get a houseboat. Seems like your problem is solved.
What's the rat of the ocean? He starts like controlling catfish or something.
Some sort of
I don't
like
think
some crabs.
Yeah, crabs. Yeah.
You get to the end, like eventually you get to shore.
And Arno and the Count have their showdown finally.
Yeah, Arno and the Count have their showdown.
You are fighting all the soldiers to keep them at bay so that Arno and the Count can fight. Ultimately, ending in both of them dying. Because Arno does the like whole pull the sword closer thing.
Like the Count stabs him and he kind of like does the whole like Lurtz from the Fellowship of the Ring. Like and pulls it closer and is going to be, and manages to like kill him too.
Meanwhile, Lucas and Sophia are like off. They're tied up
Yeah. And so, and as final boss battles go, that was so much better than the first one. It still had a lot of the problems of like, it's not a combat game.
Right.
And so you're, having to run around and like take out these guys and solve like the puzzle of like, what's this guy weak to? What's this guy weak to?
Well, what I did was when you find where the protector was being held,
Yeah.
and you leave out of there, and the like leader of the slavers just beats the crap out of these two women. Right before that gauntlet of soldiers coming at you,
Yeah.
I dropped the difficulty.
Okay.
I got to the point there where I was like, I'm done with this section, and I never brought it back up. So I didn't fail again, but like that fight with the Count, the only thing that was kind of tricky was the armored guys.
Yeah.
I was able to keep everything else at bay. Those ones I had to like kind of skirt and run in like a big circle till I like picked up enough. Because like crossbow bolts would just kind of appear in those sections where it was like, okay, you ran out. Oh, look, there happens to be one over here.
You must have missed this one over here. With those guys, I kept I had a few pots, and so I would fill the pot with like oil, and like slow them down and set it on fire. And so while they're trying to like put the fire out, I would shoot their armor off because it's very gamey where like.
Yeah, they have like a little...
The armor protects them from the fire. Like, it won't kill them if they're in their armor, but it does stop them. And so if they stop in the middle of the fire and you manage to shoot their armor off, then they die.
Burn up. Oh, okay. That's interesting. Because
what
I did for those guys is they usually had like a flaming weapon. So I would extinguish their flaming weapon.
Yeah.
And then while they were like looking at it, trying to get it relit, I would knock the armor off and then crossbow them.
Okay.
So it just goes to show you there were different approaches that you could do to get through situations in this game. But yeah.
Like it was a good, like, it was way less annoying than I don't think I maybe restarted it one time.
Yeah.
But
no, it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, it was definitely way less bad. But
and it felt much more like I felt much more like intense and like I was Amicia scrambling to dispatch these guys. It felt less gamey because of everything that had built up to that point. Whereas some of those situations was like, okay, stand here they come, like this, I know what we're doing. This actually I felt in the moment. I thought it was well executed.
Right. Yeah, I think it was a good section. And like I said, as a final boss fight goes, I'd take this way over the Pope fight or whatever in the in the first game. While all this is going on, Hugo crosses the final threshold
because he thinks Amicia is dead. He feels like he has absolutely no other reason not to just destroy everything because she was the only thing kind of keeping him from that ledge. Like throughout the whole game, he's been making comments about how he's the one to blame for all this. It'd be better if he wasn't even here, kind of thing. Like not outright saying things like I wish I was dead or whatever, but like Amicia's been the one being like, no, we can still figure this out. We'll go here. We'll do this. We have another plan we can try.
Yeah.
So when he thinks she's dead, and his mom is dead,
because he kind of like goes into like a despondent state when his mom dies.
Right.
There's this whole like internal battle that they talk about where like the macula is talking to him and trying to make him let it take control.
Right.
And so like there's a little bit like when he blows up and he kills all the soldiers and the countess with the rats, like it gets a foothold in him, like a big foothold in him. And so he's kind of despondent for a while after that. And then he kind of lets it take full control at that point when he thinks Amicia is dead too. And what that means is like they found out about this at some point, but there's like I forget what they called it, but it basically like blots out the sun. It's like some clouds or,
right,
something.
So that the rats can go wherever they want.
Exactly. Like they're no longer having to hide in the daytime. And so you kind of go towards the city that everyone else is running away from. And there's so many rats in that city.
Yeah, it's literally like waves.
Yeah.
And you're just doing your best to navigate them. And I think at some point Sophia gets hurt and has to like stay behind.
Yeah, she falls down and like breaks her leg or something or hurts her leg and can't go on.
So it's back to just like
You and
the
Lucas.
main three, from the first game, the main, like, the three that started this game, you're playing hide and seek with Lucas at the beginning of this game.
Yeah. And there's like this big ball that looks like, if you've ever played Destiny, it looks like the Traveler that's just like sitting there. And from it, these just massive tidal waves of rats in like a rhythmic pattern are coming out.
Like a heartbeat, yeah.
Yeah.
And so you do the Witcher 3 ending thing where you're like dodging the white frost trying to get to Ciri.
Yeah, like you run in between the waves to cover, basically.
Exactly.
And then it goes into like this sort of weird parallel dream world thing.
Yeah, which I get the gist of what they're doing. It's Hugo telling Amicia what she's going to have to do. But like, you go in and Amicia, you're just fighting off these like towers of rats coming towards you. And every time you fail that, it like restarts.
Well, and like basically it's like there's a lot of, you have to do, like, the way to win a lot of those sections is to do the opposite of what you've been doing all game. Like, you get in there and it's like this misty like area, and you're following like these bird statues that you've followed several times throughout the game to like find other important things.
Right.
And the way to like beat that section is to not follow the bird statues.
To go the other way, yeah.
And then there's you are getting attacked by these big things of rats, and like the way to win it is to like put the fire out that's like protecting you or whatever.
And the whole time Amicia is like bawling.
Yeah.
She's like crying. She's still beat up. It's brutal.
Yeah.
It's like heart-wrenching.
Yeah, because
the performance and like what's happening, and because you actually care about these characters.
Yeah, because like she's like refusing to give up, and Hugo's just like, it's okay, you can let me go, like you don't have to fight anymore.
And she doesn't know anything else, and her whole world at this point is Hugo and saving Hugo. It's been like her life for the past since
I don't know,
started like a year or whatever, but like it's been intense, like going through that kind of experience with these people. Like strong bonds have been built.
Yeah. And so eventually you finally get through all of those little sections, and you get to the base of where Hugo is.
Yeah, he's like kind of
sort of like fused into like
the
a
big
tree
thing. Yeah, the big ball.
And so at that point, it's basically you have to kill Hugo.
Yeah, so you get there. At this point, Hugo's told her, you know what you have to do.
Yeah.
Did you kill Hugo?
I did. I was not aware that there were multiple endings.
Have you
I
looked them
now.
up since then?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I didn't either. I just did it. I also, I'm an old man. I go to bed usually not much later than 10 o'clock. I knew I was getting close to the end of this game, and it was a weekend.
Yeah.
And so by the time I was at this point, it was like midnight. So I was just like, I'm in game mode. Like I knew, I had to do the thing. So I did the thing.
Yeah.
Because you have to stand there and wait for a while for Lucas to take the crossbow. And he's like, I'm sorry, and shoots, which it's the same ending. There's just a different line of dialogue.
Yeah.
In the like epilogue at the end.
Yeah. It's the quote unquote bad ending.
Right. Yeah. Where Amicia and Lucas, like she says she can't be around him because it hurts too much. Whereas in the good ending, she's like, he's just off researching or whatever, but they're still friends.
Right. Because basically you kill Hugo, it stops everything, and then it skips ahead months,
I think it's a year.
Something like that.
And Amicia's in the mountains at the house.
And, she has a little shrine to Hugo, and she's going somewhere with Sophia.
Yeah, Sophia shows up, and Sophia comes to the house, says, are you ready to go? She's like, yeah, let's go. They talk a little bit back and forth about like, how you doing? It's been rough, but I've been getting better, that kind of thing. And then she says, I need a minute. And she goes to like the shrine of Hugo and like puts a flower on it or something, and basically says her goodbyes, I guess.
Yeah. And then as they kind of leave and she talks, basically what she's intending to do is, I guess they've found a lead on
the potential
new carrier. And so she's like, in the past, basically they've had to rely on the order to help them, and the order always like screws things up. If there's hope for, maybe getting this, like I couldn't save Hugo, but maybe I can make it better for the next group.
Yeah, and then it's after the credits that you see the little baby's hand.
Yeah, and the baby is
macula,
like
crawls down the arm, and it makes the awful triggering music cue that will forever.
and like the
inspire.
background noise in that scene is like a hospital sound, so it's like
it sounds more modern.
It sounds more modern. And so, like, I think they've come out and said at this time there's no plans for like a sequel.
Yeah, like this is just a nod to the universe, like the in-game universe continuing. But yeah, I wonder, because it would have to kind of be like an Assassin's Creed thing now, where it's like, oh, now we're in
like it jumps to a completely new thing,
new time. Yeah,
like Amicia and Hugo's story is done.
Yeah, I guess there's not really any reason to believe that because Amicia was the protector that she also has any kind of like longer life or any kind of supernatural.
Yeah.
She's just, I guess, trying to do what she can in her time to help set things up for the next one, I guess.
Right. And so, like, like you said, I think Assassin's Creed is a good example where it's kind of like you could almost set up like this Assassins Templars sort of situation to continue the games if they wanted to. I think it'd be cool to see more. I like these games. I like the world. I like the story and the lore behind it. So I would be cool if they eventually down the road decide to continue it. But also I'm satisfied with where it ended. So because I guess that's the big thing. We've both beaten it. What did you think of the ending?
I've wrestled with it a lot, and like going through it and talking about it now has kind of helped too. It's like it's that thing similar to Last of Us Part 2, where it's like I appreciate what they did, and and it's impactful, and it's probably more impactful and a more like interesting and lasting story because of the decision they made to end it this way. I don't like it.
Yeah.
Like as a person going through it and experiencing it, did I enjoy it? No. Did it make me happy? No. Am I satisfied? No.
Yeah.
But was that the point? No.
Yeah.
They intentionally wanted to make people feel things, and I think that worked. But I was also like Amicia, kind of hoping that in the end hope would prevail.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. And that's the story they told. And the story they told was affecting, and they did it well. Would I have liked to have seen a slightly happier ending? Of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that as an experience, as a game, it was excellently done. Just not how I wanted it to end. Yeah.
Because I'm very much in the same boat where it was, like I like my games to, to have like a positive ending. I like to try to get the best quote unquote good ending. You
like to feel a little bit of closure, satisfaction. You like to feel good for the characters at the end of it.
Exactly. And there's an aspect to playing video games where you kind of have that like hero fantasy sort of thing where it's just kind of like, okay, in the real world, things get crappy a lot. In the game, it's like I can make this turn out very well because there's a lot of, I think, parallels towards like childhood terminal illness and like grief and everything that this game goes through. And it's like, like sometimes in the video game you want to be like, okay, well, in the real world kids die sometimes from illnesses that we can't do anything about. In the fantasy game world, like we could save them. And I do think the game, like I have said, does a fantastic job of putting you in Amicia's shoes where like you really empathize with her character. You really want it to turn out well. Like you don't trust people, but like the entire time, like I was going through the game and she was like, no, there has to be like a solution. There has to be something good.
You could definitely see, like you felt the desperation when she was saying those about halfway through. You felt that like she's the only one that believes this.
Yeah.
Like you as the player, I was starting to see like Amicia's starting to snap a little bit.
Yeah, like because you do feel like that desperation, like you said, of like she is searching for like the cure. She wants there to be the cure, just like I want there to be the cure. As the player, zoomed back a little bit, it's like, I don't know if we're getting a cure. I don't know if this is like gonna subvert my expectations, or if this is gonna be like a Game of Thrones, like if you think this has a happy ending, it doesn't sort of situation,
Well, and I think too, the precedent that they set for the first game was that there could be a happy ending. Because the first game, like the whole Hugo wasn't cured. It wasn't resolved in that sense, but it was a happy ending. Like the family was back together. The sun was shining.
Yeah.
They were eating apples. There was still a hint of like stuff's not right in this world, because
it
when
still
you're at
ended with the little creepy musical cue.
Well, yeah, and when you're at the little when you're at the fair, and like Hugo's kind of getting like they're getting treated a little bit odd, like there's still things are a little off, but it was that hopeful ending.
Right.
Whereas this just outright, at least for Hugo and Amicia's story, there was no happy, hopeful ending. Like for the potential next carrier, yeah, maybe what Amicia learned here, she could start some sort of proactive order or something to like actually help the next time that this happens. But for these characters right here, there was no chance at a happy ending.
Yeah, which like you said, I think it definitely impacts you. It makes you feel things. Is it what you were hoping? No. And I think like The Last of Us 2 is a great example too, of like there were a lot of people who were very upset about the ending of that game. Same with like Red Dead 2. And other games of that ilk, where it's just kind of like,
and the fact that we're comparing this to those games is why I think more people need to play this series.
Exactly.
At this point, you're deep in the end of the spoiler section, so you probably already have, but like, play these games.
Yeah, because it's it punches above its weight in so many aspects, and story is included. Where it's just kind of like they told a fantastic story. It didn't end like I would have liked, because I would love for it all to work out for them, because they've had so many difficulties. But it didn't, and like that still is impactful too, because it's these characters that you've grown to know and love over the course of these games, and it's like one of the characters that you've been playing as is like traumatized and like just wants there to be a happy ending and doesn't get it. And on top of that, this other character that you've been protecting the whole game, you had to kill. And so it's like, man,
well, yes. And there's a reason. The reason people still talk about The Last of Us 2 to this day is because people have strong and divided feelings about it. And I feel like this could be the same way if if it got that mainstream attention.
Right.
But, Naughty Dog didn't make it, so
it's not exclusive to PlayStation, so that
doesn't have that spotlight on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was something. And like kind of leading into our verdicts, something I didn't really touch on that might seem kind of out of place when I get to my verdict is that I think the first game as a game is a tighter, like kind of more cohesive experience. I think that in the ways that this game was longer, expanded, and gave you bigger sections and different ways to approach things, I think like in the way we were talking earlier about how there felt like two separate part A and part B, like I felt like there might have been a little bit more bloat in this game. Not that it's like super long. I felt like because some of these sections were like bigger and the chapters were longer, like there were more ways that I like failed or like had to, I guess because it grew, it didn't feel as tight in some areas.
Yeah.
And so like leading into our verdicts, I kind of want to just mention that because I guess we can go ahead and get right into it unless you have anything else you want to say. But the way we rate games is through the F through S scale, with S being a masterpiece, F being hot garbage, which I doubt we'll ever talk about an F game.
Maybe.
I mean, like if we both play a game and we're just like, wow, this is so terrible, we should talk about it.
Sonic's coming out this year.
Yeah, but we didn't talk about Nickelodeon All-Stars.
That's true. That is an F. That's an F game for me.
At least not in this sense. But yeah.
We've now rated it.
Exactly. It's an F. But like I said earlier, we reviewed the first one on YouTube. We gave it an A. We both really liked that game. For me, I'll start. I think that, like I just said, the first game is a more like a tighter package as a game. I think this game takes bigger swings and tries to do more and has like we've talked about, a much more kind of thought-provoking ending to it, but based purely on the fact that you have to play the first one first. This isn't one of those series where you can just jump into this. I mean, I guess you could, but
yeah,
you really got to play the first one. But because like I would recommend the first one as a game over the second one just slightly, I'll give this a B. But it's like it's right there with the first one, like a B plus kind of. It's just like a half step below it in like just overall. But I think that it hits higher highs. I just think that, because it tried to do more, I feel like some of it wasn't quite as tight. And like some of the times where like it slowed you down or things like that, I just wanted to keep going, or which it, to its credit, gave me the option to do. But yeah. I don't want it to sound like I'm giving it a lesser score than the first one, meaning that I like didn't like it, which we understand that, but maybe people, certain people listening are used to the IGN scale where there's really only actually like
7,
8. Yeah. Maybe a 9. God of War. Well, God of War probably got a 10. But yeah, this is a really excellent game. I think both games in the series are worth playing. Obviously, I've been like probably one of the loudest voices in the like indie gaming podcasting space trying to get people to play the first one. Now I'm going to add the second one to that as well. So Dylan, how would you rank this one?
I would agree with a lot of what you said. I think this game, like Requiem, really improved on Innocence, and Innocence is a fantastic game. Like you said, we gave it an A. I really like the story of the second game. I like the story of the first game too, but I think they did such a cool thing with like giving you all these moments of like peace where you thought like I think it really helped put you in Amicia's shoes.
Absolutely.
In this game.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was really cool. I got to the point where like I was like Amicia. I wanted to believe there was a good ending. I wanted to believe all these things. And so, when the ending happens, it's like, okay, wow, that was really impactful. So I thought that was really cool. I think overall, pretty much everything they did, quality of life wise and iterative wise, like was an improvement. I liked a lot of the new options and tools that they gave you. So for me, I am giving it an A, and especially for not putting in an annoying final boss like the first game had.
Yeah.
So an A for me. If I had to, it's so hard for me to think about these games like
as separate experiences.
Yeah, like I played them so close together that it kind of almost just feels like one 30-hour game that I played with a couple week break in the middle there. And like you said, it would blow my mind that you wouldn't play the first game first and then play the second game. So like I would recommend wholeheartedly both of these games. I think they're both outstanding. I think I gave them both an A. So
nice. Well, like I said, there's no closing game, no anything like that on this episode. But if you've played these games and you agree with us or disagree with us, you can hop in our Discord and chat with us about it, or chat about whatever other games you're playing at the time. Well, when this releases, there's going to be quite a few out.
Yeah.
We have a cool group of people in there that just talk about games, talk about things going on in the world of gaming. Check out our YouTube. We've plugged it a couple times. We have a review of this game. We have a few other reviews on there. We have some topic episodes or topic videos that are a lot of fun. And if you enjoyed this episode, a rating or a review on podcasting apps that allow you to do that helps us a lot in the fight against the algorithm.
Yes.
The rats of the algorithm. You are our torch against the rats of the algorithm. But yeah, we would greatly appreciate that if you would be so kind. Dylan, is there anything you want to say closing this one out?
I think you covered it all.
Yeah, I think we got it. Take that, Tales from the Backlog. We can do long episodes too. And with that, we will catch you on the next episode.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of the Friendly Neighborhood Gamers podcast. If so, we would greatly appreciate your help in growing the show and the community by giving us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any other podcasting app that allows it.
We also have some great videos on our YouTube channel, including reviews, rankings, and other topics. We'd really appreciate you checking it out. And if you want to keep up with everything going on in the neighborhood, follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and feel free to jump in our Discord server.
We hope to see you there. Links for everything are in the podcast description. Thanks again for listening, and remember,
Stay friendly, gamers.